Hello everyone and welcome to the Nytro Marketer. Oliver Quell, you are in charge of product go-to-market at the Access Group, one of the largest UK-based business management software provider. Welcome on the show.
Delighted to be here, Stan. Big fan of your work.
Thank you so much. So Oliver, we at the Nytro Marketer, we're part of Nytro Marketing, a global marketing agency. And what we try to do with this show is to ignite conversation with innovative marketers across the industry, like you, Oliver. We work with Fortune 100 companies and also startup in the world, in the Web3 area. We notice that it's a very fast-paced industry. People are struggling with new tools, new ideas. They're trying to keep their career going forward. Nowadays, marketers need to be salesperson. They need to be poet. They need to be psychologist, entrepreneur, right? They need to be visionaries. And this is why we've created the Nytro Marketer. And this is why we are so glad to have you on board with us today, Oliver. So let's keep it. Let's kick it started. And can you tell us a bit about yourself? What do you do at Access Group?
Sure. I was going to just give you just a quick background on myself because it kind of flavors some of the stuff that I've done. I started off working at a company called Evolve, which was a West Coast company where I was kind of pretty much Mr. International. Everything that was not the US, it was sales, support, implementation, product. It was a varied role. I was then acquired by a company called Primavera, which was a East Coast company, which then got bought by Oracle. And so I was wearing many hats. And then obviously you end up at Oracle and it's very functionally aligned. And so I decided to take on a new challenge. And that's when I joined KDS, which is a travel and expense company. And again, there I was doing that many hats thing again with product marketing. Had a blast of a time there. And then that company was acquired by Amex, GBT. And again, when you get to that big company, you have to have functional alignment. I wasn't really ready for that functional alignment yet. So I did another project joined another company called CoreHR, which is a HCM, payroll, learning and talent management software servicing the plus 1,000 employees across UK and Ireland. And so after 3 years there as the CMO, which was product and marketing together underneath me, that was acquired by the Access Group. And so that was my journey to getting into Access. So I went kind of from managing one product with a bunch of modules around 35 million to then 18 products, which was around about 180 million of ARR in that one division alone. And I think that's the first time in my career that I thought, you know what, I've been wearing those hats, the marketing hat, product marketing and product. And this is the one where I thought this is the right time for me to be functionally aligned in product. And so for the last 3 years, I've been managing that portfolio. And in the last few days, I've now taken on a new role to run the platform called Workspace at Access. And that's gone from sort of 18 products now to the full sort of 200 plus products across the whole of the Access Group that sit on that Workspace platform. And as we acquire companies, we bring them in and put them onto Workspace. So that's kind of where I am right now. And I'm about a week and a half into that new role.
Wow. Thank you for being here. I imagine that your days are a little bit packed at the moment.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. Greatly appreciated, Oli. So we worked together at KDS, and at the time I was stunned at how focused you were on the customer, right? Everything you did at the time you were CMOs, but everything you did was for the customer. I remember that we worked on sales certification. We worked on personas. Those are usually very theoretical, but with you, it was right on. I mean, you were really trying to understand how our product meet the need of our customer. I was super impressed with that. You then moved on, as you said, and I wonder, how you see the tension that sometimes arises between sales, marketing, and product. How do you make sense of that?
So I think in one word, it's horizons. So if I think of sales, and again, I'm not bashing sales here, but sales are often thinking a quarter, or Access Group as well, a month at a time in terms of hitting their target. So it can drive a certain behavior. While in marketing, as you know, when we're working together, you've got to be thinking not just about filling the pipe for that quarter, but you've got to be looking a lot further ahead to make sure that you constantly got that vision of how do we make sure that we can keep the business going and drive towards those outcomes. And then in product, you've got to work like even further horizon, because if you think about sometimes the time from concept through to delivery through to implementation and adoption of a product, depending on your industry and your product, there can be a really long lag between that start point and the end point. And so you've really got to be thinking so much further ahead than both sales and marketing when you're in that product. So that's why I think that dynamic starts to create friction, right? And sales often sort of flip, because they want the flexibility of agile development so that you can push new features in at short notice, but they also want waterfall because they want to have a predictability of outcomes that they can be selling and sometimes potentially selling what we don't quite have yet. And so if as a product person, if you don't have that long-term strategy focused on both customer outcomes, knowing your personas, knowing your total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, if you don't understand that and map to that to hit your company growth objectives aligned with customer outcomes, then what you find is it's really hard to push back, and then it becomes a bit of a free-for-all, right? If you're not aiming outwards, everybody starts aiming to product, and I think it's as a product leader, it's your own responsibility. You've got to have those arrows aimed outwards. You've got to be showing the company where we're headed, why that's great for the company, and you've got to create a vision that people believe and buy into, so they don't try and ram features into the roadmap.
It's super tough, right? I mean, startups, they are confronted with that all the time. Oh, if we only had that feature, we would kick it. And how do you manage that? I mean, when you're in a big established group like where you are today, it might be different. But you remember your days at KDS? I mean, we were under a lot of pressure to just have that direct connect, for example.
Yep. No, and again, I go back to that same thing. It's about, you've got to be resolute and focused, and that vision has to be exciting. You have to be able to say, I know you want this feature. I know that it's the thing that you think will win this deal, but this is the size of the prize, right? We have to be opening up more serviceable market. This is the size of that prize for you if we do this instead of that. And I think that actually was it wasn't easy. It was hard at KDS, right? It's always a balancing act. But because product and marketing were tightly coupled in smaller companies, and it's not smaller, it's actually in some ways easier. So when you get to that bigger company, I actually think it's harder because you're functionally aligned and you've got different objectives.
Right.
And so again, it becomes even more important to have that tight alignment to company strategy, customer outcomes, and bringing people together. I had a good example of something that I thought that I really like at the Access Group to keep marketing and product aligned now. What we do is we do like press releases the month before, the quarter before the release cycle. So we work together on press releases. What will this release do when we've, at the end of this quarter, so that throughout that quarter, everyone's aware of what we're doing, what the value is to the customer and the personas, so that we can all in lockstep protect that vision, so that press release actually becomes a press release that marketing deliver to push out to attract more revenue or drive more cross sales. So I think that's just one thing that I've seen in a bigger company and functionally aligned that's really helped reduce that friction. But the friction with sales will always be there, because sales want to win a deal. That's
a good tip. So I want to remember everybody, and I see all your comments. So thank you for attending. Thank you for being here. Hi, Nassar. Please tell us where you're streaming from today. We would love to hear where in the world you are located. And remember that you can always ask your question online. We want it to be as interactive as possible.
So I'm streaming from sunny Windsor.
Okay.
Windsor,
and I'm
Windsor,
from Princeton.
UK.
Princeton, New Jersey, where it's apparently much cooler than it is for you, Oli.
It's hot here.
So, Oli, AI is everywhere these days, right? Especially since ChatGPT was launched in November. Now everyone and their dog seems to be using it. I don't know if you know that, but the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, he said that artificial intelligence is more profound than fire or electricity or anything we've done in the past. Investors are really pushing for product manager to be using AI. And my question to you is, how do you make out between all the buzzword and the actual value add for your product? And then, what is the impact of AI on your team? Like what kind of skills do they need to have? And finally, and I know it's a long question, how do you help your leadership team adapt to this change?
All right, well, this is where I don't enumerate my answer in case I forget what number I'm on, because there's quite a lot. There's quite a lot to unpack in that one. So again, and I will say my short answer is it is absolutely not hype, right? I mean, it's value add. Certainly in the last 12 months. It's changed exponentially, right? We've gone from quite disappointing bots with pretty unsatisfactory outcomes to what's an absolute complete game changer in every industry. And you kind of need to look at everything you do today and change that paradigm to how will we be doing this in 6 months if that change curve happens at the same rate that it's happened today. Because if you're just staring forward and you're just thinking of a linear path, you're going to face plant straight into that right. Curve.
Right.
And then let me think. The second one is about investor pressures, right? So as I said, we just recently had in October valuation of £9+ billion, right? So the investor pressure speaks of multiples of EBITDA, and I don't know what an AI adopted company gets in the future as part of their EBITDA multipliers, but I can tell you there's something I know for certain, that is that companies that don't adopt AI will have a lower and potentially significant lower multiple of EBITDA than those who have embraced and run with it and brought it forward to really address the needs of their customers in ways that they could never have done before. So the size of the prize, I think, really for the investors, I don't know the size of it, but it's definitely bigger. But the size of the prize of adopting AI is massive, and the repercussions of not. I think that's becoming quite a big chasm, bigger than ever the on-prem versus SaaS chasm of valuation. So I think it's that profound.
So it's a no-brainer for you.
Yeah, I mean it is, but it's about doing it in a considered way, customer outcome focused way, rather than just let's just put chat GPT on everything, because that's the road to ruin. I think the third point was about teams and skills.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just sounds like a really rubbish answer, but like, it's changing so fast. The kids at school are being told, the jobs that today won't exist, but I can't tell you what those jobs will be because we don't know what they are yet. And we're not quite in that realm when it comes to our team, because I don't believe it's quite that fast in my own team base. But if you look at the job market, it sort of seems to be measured in dog years, right? You go to someone who's had 12 months ChatGPT experience working with OpenAI, and what they're asking for in the job market is what we'd have paid someone who had 9 years in engineering, right? And they've literally just walked out of uni, right? And they've had a year's experience. So with that difference there, the reskilling is absolutely key. But the speed at which you can learn and adapt to it with OpenAI or any of the other engines is so fast too. So I think the reskilling element isn't like a huge program of work that needs to be done and brought in. It's about making time and giving time to people to do hackathons like we did last week. We did a massive hackathon. We have 2,000 developers, and they had a hackathon a couple of days. These are the things in which people get real, tangible understanding of the technology, what it's capable of, and then working with product that can help inform how do we address customer outcomes and focus on customer outcomes by using AI. I mean, it's not going to replace developers, but it's definitely going to make everybody so much more efficient at what they do, but also at what they deliver for the customers. So,
sorry, I want to interrupt.
right.
I find your answer quite optimistic, and in the past I heard a lot of leaders saying, wow, it's going to cost so much to hire the right skills. And nowadays, if you want to have any data scientist, you need to be ready to pay a fortune. You seem to be saying that, well, actually, we've got the tool to train the right people when need be.
I think we have, but that doesn't, we already have. It's easier for me to say because we already have a number of experts already in-house who really understand the fundamentals, especially from a platform perspective and the complexities of modeling this out in a very complex portfolio B2B business. You absolutely need that, but I still think there is not panic stations. You still have to have a leader. You still have to have people who fully understand AI platforms, but in terms of the broader team, I think there's a lot to be gained from just making sure that people get the time to explore it. I mean, some of the stuff we see in the hackathons, you can actually ask ChatGPT how to do stuff, and it'll explain it back to you. In terms of, this is what I want the outcome to be. Show me how I do it. And so it's a completely different paradigm of interaction that I think leads to a really positive culture. And I'm not as pessimistic. I think there are new roles that will come out, like understanding semantics and language. Some of the things that will help feed the large language models are new types of roles. But you do have to have a couple of in-house experts. But again, at the same time, it doesn't mean you have to suddenly have a massive influx of super high cost experts in every role.
Right. So that was for your team on the tech side. What about leadership? How do you prepare your leadership team to make the right decision when it comes to AI?
Yeah, and that's a kind of a normal distribution answer, right? Because you've got on one end, a lot of people. There's a lot of scaremongering, right? There's the AI nuclear winter where the hype was all built up and then all of a sudden it didn't happen. So there's naysayers and doubters. And then you've got the other extreme where leaders are saying, right, we should be doing this, and this, and I want it all by last Monday. So make that happen. But across the leadership, I think we've got to bear in mind both ends of the optimist and the pessimist scale, because the truth sits really between those 2 points, and making sure everyone is aware of what you're heading, what you're using it for, and where you're going. Address the pessimists, right? Because they're valid points, right? I mean, if AI starts hallucinating, right, and coming up with very random and strange answers, I mean, that has a massive impact on your could have a massive impact on your shareholder value, right? If bad press about these crazy hallucinations on AI. But even worse, we deal with patient records, we deal with payrolls, we deal with sensitive information. And if you train AI on an unbounded amount of data, it doesn't know what it can and can't show. So, again, once you get that genie out the bottle, it's hard to cram it back in again. So there are valid concerns from one side that balances out the optimism of the other, which is, how do we do more? How do we go faster? How do we use AI internally as well as externally to build better products, better customer experience? But be realistic about it's somewhere between those 2 points. It isn't, let's build it yesterday, and it isn't, we can never build it because, it could turn into Skynet.
Right. And you touch on a point that I wanted to raise, which is outsourcing AI, right? We see a lot of companies saying, look, we don't have the skills. It's not our core business. Companies are very good at that. Why don't we outsource AI? What's your take on that? Do you have a rule of thumb for what you outsource and what you don't?
Well, I guess, again, without giving you a flappy answer, I mean, in the world of AI, it's quite fresh, right? In terms of a strategy. But if I look at how we've always thought of our strategy, it's in-house, the things that generate your IP, the things that are close to your company's value, and make sure you keep them and that knowledge in-house, and then push out to nearshore, which is working really successfully for the Access Group, and a nearshore mentality to push things out. But again, sometimes in the past we have built things because we wanted to build them our way, a platform approaches that we built because it suited our needs at that time. But the reality is, when it comes to AI, whether it's OpenAI or Bard or whoever it is that you want to use as a plugin for your large language modeling, you're not going to have the investment or the resources that these people have, and you benefit from the crowd, training those, inputting more language into those models. And as long as you can host your own private version and then have the open version feeding it with the latest updates, then I think you've got that right balance between in-source and outsource, but also definitely certainly not competing with Microsoft on recreating OpenAI.
Right. So let's dive into product development a little bit more. And you work for Access, the Access Group, and one of your specialty is HR. We know that AI is central to a lot of HR application and software today, right? I wonder, how do you use user-centered design in your product development strategy?
Yeah, I mean, so user-centered, it's an interesting one because the whole paradigm has completely shifted, right? So of course we start with user-centered design, but the paradigm shift is pretty fundamental, because if you think back, we start with a DOS prompt where you had to learn a computer language basically and type it into a screen, and then that was too hard. So then we created a GUI, so that was graphical user interface, and again then that sort of became the norm. But now we've kind of gone full circle where you sort of back to a prompt, but this time the computer understands the human language.
Right.
So it's not so. We're not changing the fundamentals of understanding our personas, understanding their value drivers, and user-centric design. We just got to change the thinking to say, well, in a world where it's probably going to be a conversation, how do we deliver this value to this person to make their life better, to help their job, to facilitate collaboration and engagement, but in this new paradigm shift. So again, maybe not as useful an answer as I'd say, but it hasn't flushed through completely yet, right? We're just constantly on the change curve, I would say, on that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you interact yourself with customers?
Yeah. I think, I can't remember, I'm not going to say who it was, but an old boss said he went into a company and spoke to all of the product team and said, who's spoken to a customer in the last 2 weeks, and anyone who didn't put up their hand was sacked. Right now, I know that's not a really nice way of doing things, but it's a point that proves the point. You have to speak to customers all the time. But I do think that in the age of AI and telemetry, there's multiple ways of speaking to customers. There's what they say, and then there's what's happening and what they're doing. And I think that with OpenAI being part of your product telemetry, as much as the feedback that you get from your product NPS scores or all of these types, and the day-to-day interactions from customers, by bringing all of those bits together, that's really speaking to the customer, what they say, but what they do, and what you think. It's again, sometimes customers want faster horses, right? And in this case, we're trying to bring them a car. Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to remind everybody that if you have any burning question for Oliver, fire away. We'll be happy to answer. So, Oliver, your title include go-to-market, GTM. Can you tell me how that shape your role at the Access Group? Like how does your job today compare to a more traditional product leader?
Yeah.
And
so
how do you interact with other departments? Do you have interaction with sales, with marketing team? I would love to know that.
Yeah, so I think it's more of a forced part of the title to stop product thinking that it's an island in itself, right? Because by calling it GTM, it's about that life cycle from, I call it the 5 A's: awareness to acquisition to activation, and then adoption, right? All the way through to what we really want in product and marketing, right, is advocacy. And so pretty much everything that the product team need to do is to be thinking about how they're underpinning and supporting every part of that customer journey and life cycle. And again, how do we facilitate it with product? And that's why it says GTM, because it's the whole go-to-market approach. And that fosters that collaboration that you talked about, right? Because as you're going through those pillars, you have to interact with the stakeholders to understand what the outcome is that they want as much as what the outcome ends up being from a customer's perspective, and then repivoting when you think that the win-loss ratio is going down. You need to be looking at what is the reason behind that. How will you interface? What is it that's causing that? And working with your sales, your marketing, and the customers, obviously, but to pull all of that data and information in to make decisions, to pivot and shift slightly, to adjust your go-to-market according to the outcomes that you're getting. And again, with, don't want to keep talking about AI about it, but it's, again, that's going to help AI is going to help fast track a lot of that. Because if you want to move to a product-led growth business model, analyzing that telemetry, looking at the data of every stage of that customer journey and how you could optimize it, it's going to be a commodity. Everyone will be able to do that. And I don't think it's, I don't think that's going to mean that it's entirely product-led growth and you don't need sales or marketing. I just think it's going to drive, certainly like cross-sell, for example, in a portfolio company like Access, it's going to be a real value driver for speed to value. But it's going to generate a whole bunch of insights that we didn't even know or didn't even think about when it comes to that whole customer life cycle, from awareness to advocacy.
So it seems to me that this go-to-market vision and the role that product plays is like the ideal picture of what it should be. Now we all know that companies are, not every company out there, right? You've got like extremely mature companies that have achieved that. In your experience working for large, medium, smaller companies, what really gets in the way to achieving that?
Lack of clarity of vision and lack of collaboration, right? And I put it firmly in the camp of product need to own this, right? The product have to have the vision and the story. Product have to clearly articulate that story to all of the stakeholders and then manage them all accordingly. And then they have to understand the commercial outcomes that align to shareholder value as well as those customer outcomes. And oftentimes I hear, the lack of commerciality in product sometimes is the downfall. And I put it firmly into the product set that product need to have a commercial mindset and think of customer outcomes at the same time. And really, it isn't difficult. You don't have to have huge amounts of products and tools to manage all of this, but you have to understand that you need to map demand, qualify it relative to that company, customer, and shareholder value, and be able to manage that inbound as well as map yourself towards a multi-year vision, and make sure that one doesn't derail the other. Sounds easy, but I mean, you don't have to have huge amounts of teams in order just to be very disciplined and very focused, rather than peanut butter everything and just try and do a bit of everything, because that's kind of where you stagger around blind.
All right. Well, Oli, we are getting at the end of this interview, which has been truly fascinating. And I've got one last question for you, which I'm sure is going to interest all the product leaders out there, is how do you judge whether a product leader is really knocking it out of the park?
I mean, I'm going to be a bit binary here. I mean, you have to look at what is their annual recurrent revenue growth target for their product, and how well are they achieving it? How are they doing from a portfolio perspective on the strategic products versus the tactical versus the maintenance products versus the sunset products? Are they disciplined and following the key North Star metrics that we set for each of those product horizons based on the outcome that we want for each of them? And the real trick on this is, can they achieve their commercial outcomes, their commercial KPIs, as well as improving product NPS at the same time? Because that's when you know that you've got the superstars, because you can go for the money or you can go for the product NPS, but you've got to keep them in lockstep, because you've got to make sure that in the 21st century, customers and their end users love using the product. It can't just be about monetizing the product, because sure as day and night is different. If you drop your product NPS, you're going to start having financial difficulties with your revenue streams later.
Thank you. That was fascinating. And I just want to, I don't know if we can display our face on the side of that. Let me see. I want everybody to know that you can scan this QR code now, and we will be happy to send you product team AI cheat sheet, meaning that we are going to be summarizing all the key takeaways from the conversation today and sending it to you. So make sure you scan this, and we will be happy to share the outcome of today's conversation with you. Here we go. We can now display our face. Oli, thank you so much. It's been fascinating. It's been a pleasure having you with us today. I know you are busy, so I will let you go. But once again, on the name of the entire Nytro Marketing team, thank you for being here today.
Thanks a lot, Stan. Take care.
Thanks.
See ya.
And bye-bye.